And he was a guy who was a captain of a contract vessel retrieving intercontinental ballistic missiles when we were testing them, firing them downrange in the South Pacific, in the South Atlantic. Jacques Vallée had heard, I think, second or third hand this account, and it's in one of his books. I actually interviewed the man who was the captain of the ship. So what the ETs were doing, it's 1962 or 3, they were trying to slow down the mutual assured destruction arms race. And this was happening in the Soviet Union too. So as these missiles were being fired, they didn't have hot nuclear warheads. They were just a missile. They were trying to perfect the guidance system and telemetry. The ET craft would show up, and they would keep missing their mark. So they couldn't figure out exactly how this would operate, to perfect the system. Well, one night, this captain, who I know personally, was notified by his radar operator that they had one of these ET craft on radar. He contacted the command center, and they were able to then get a lock on it and triangulate it. And unfortunately, they hit it with some kind of electromagnetic weapon, and it fell into the Atlantic. This has happened a number of times. So he was vectored in to retrieve that next morning, and they got there, and all that was left was a 6-foot square ejection pod, and that was a seamless object. And inside were 4 little ET beings. He says, handsome little men. And they had no hair, no pinna, which is the ear flap, a very kind of minimal lip and nose. And he said they were the color of Sicilians. I'm just quoting from the guy. Kind of a bronze-colored, very handsome, nice, beautiful eyes. And they were about 39 inches. He was very specific, tall. And I said, yes, I know this species. And then he went on and on. A nuclear sub came up beside them, and a sub came up, and these guys who were intelligence people came on board and threatened everyone on that ship to be killed if they ever spoke of it. So much so that when he had surgery, they had an intel person came in when he was under anesthesia. They were so worried he'd speak of this, what I'm about to tell you. So they were able to, I don't know if they ever retrieved the main object, but this sort of seamless pod was taken on board. Unfortunately, the deceased ETs were put in the ship's freezer until this nuclear submarine came along. And when the people came and took everything, and this guy was very upset. Not that they had knocked one of these craft down, but about the clothes these guys were wearing. Now this sounds ridiculous. Okay, so they had a metallicized suit on that was all one piece that somehow wired them in to their system. But he said it had no zippers, no buttons, and he couldn't see how they could ever put them on or take them off. This is the only reason he contacted me. I'm not kidding. No. Because, see, it's the little things that stick with you. You know, it's like there's an enigma here. So everything else he could understand. He could understand a UFO, he could understand an ET, he could understand a scalar electromagnetic weapon system that is a longitudinal weapon. It isn't a wave that can go faster than the speed of light and knock these down. We've been doing this since the 40s. That's what Roswell was. Roswell was an early scalar longitudinal weapon. I mean, you don't go from interstellar space and lose your way and crash over the only atomic bomb squadron in the world. This was a hit, and it's tragic. So what he told me, he said, well, you know, God forgive us. So he said, how could they put those on and off? I said, they don't. He said, what do you mean? They can't live in them forever. I said, no. They create a energy field using this infra-ultrasonic tonality that crosses into the form in the 3D, and instantly it forms around them. And it dematerializes the same way. So they put it on and put it off by actually a resonant energy shift where the thing is materialized and dematerialized. He says, that must be it, because there's no other way they could have gotten in or out of these things. Okay, so the technology of the science of consciousness extends and goes straight into how these civilizations not only communicate, but how they create their craft, put on their clothes, move through multiple dimensions and from one point in space-time to another. But now consider everything I've just described is folded within each of us. Everything, all this knowledge. This is not anything mysterious if you allow yourself to understand that you are, in a sense, a quantum hologram micro-universe of the whole universe. You have you're awake, well, those of you who haven't put to sleep yet, you're awake and you're conscious. You have this aspect of yourself from the unbounded consciousness that becomes your individual self. And within that, sort of the Lesha Vidya, the sort of the essence of your individuality, in its purest form, is just a point of thought sound, like a mantra, each of you. And then you have this astral body that you can fly around with in lucid dreams, and that you fly around with when you pass away, if you choose to be in that form. When I died, I was in my causal thought sound thing. I left all of it behind except that. And then you have your physical body. So here we are, this dimension, physical body, body of light, the tonality of the essence of your own signature, and awake mind. So don't be sort of befuddled by these extraterrestrial manifestations, because if you know your own self, it's all within you. Now, they have developed the science of consciousness as well as electronic technologies that allow for all kinds of manifestations. So if you want to visualize every city, S-I-D-D-H-I, power and ability that's been described in the Vedas and ancient literature in ancient Egypt, every one of those can be replicated if you're an advanced enough civilization technologically. So there's a technological component to levitation, dematerialization, teleportation, bilocation, etc. So that, there's a lot of science that will evolve. So over the next few thousand years, all of this will become abundant on this planet. And we're sort of just beginning to understand this. But in terms of what's been done in classified projects, it's more than you can imagine. Ben Rich of Lockheed Skunk Works said, anything you can imagine, we've already done at the Skunk Works, particularly out in the Cube. You know what the Cube is? The underground complex up near Edwards, that area, Edwards Air Force Base, California. Outside there, so there's a subterranean area called the Cube. And I know some guys who've worked in the Cube, the state-of-the-art facility there. And they have experimented with this, including technologies that do everything I've just described. Except they haven't been able to bring the consciousness aspect of it into it.